we begin a new cycle, Rambam, and we will focus today on Mitzvos, not all of them, just what he writes at the end. The truth is, at first I was thinking, with the Mitzvos, you got so many opportunities because you can choose any mitzvah. But the truth is, to focus on any mitzvah we'll get to later when we move through the cycle. So right now, even though today's Rambam is the Mitzvos Asay, but at the end of all the mitzvahs, the Rambam speaks about something that I would like to address because it's primarily about the Mitzvos Asay. So the Rambam says as follows: Siyum, in the end of the mitzvahs, he writes, Eluheim, he gives the amounts of all the 613 mitzvahs. But then he asks, V'yesh mitzvahs acheres, shenischatshu acha matan Torah. There are other mitzvahs that have been, I don't know the word added, but that came about after matan Torah. The kavu oisam neviim v'chachamim, and they were established by the prophets and the chachamim, upashtu b'chol Yisrael, and they become accepted all over. And he gives his example of the mitzvahs that Rabbanan Kigayin Mikra Megillah V'Ner Chanukah Ritainis Tisha B'av V'Yadayim V'Erev. V'Yesh L'Chol Mitzvah Me'elu Perushim V'Dikdukim. They all have their details, and everything will be explained. Now, then he goes on. At all these mitzvahs we need to do. Now, here goes the discussion that the Rambam brings into the here. A very important issue. The Einam Teisefes al Mitzvahs HaTorah. They're not considered adding. Torah says don't add and don't take away. And he adds another line. Again, that's not really in Leisaisu, that's a separate process, but the Rambam adds the Leimar to say, that means that, what does this tell you? A Navi can't come along and say, I got a new command from the Eibishter. The Eibishter commanded us in this mitzvah, La'isifa, L'mitzvahs HaTorah, Oy L'chaser Achas Mikol, I'm sorry, L'chaser Mikol, Achas Me'elu, or any of these mitzvahs. Avo. So basically, they can't come along and say, the Torah, the Eibishter told me. In my seafood, Bez, Im Navi, Shiur Beis Azman, Mitzvah, Derech Takon, Derech Hera, Derech Gezeira, Ein Zu Teisefes. That's not called adding. Sharei Le Omru Shakadosh Baruch Hu Tziva Lasas there. Oy Likros Megillah Benos. The Ilu Omru Ken I receive out there. Okay, all very simple, very, very easy to understand. This depends what they say. Are they saying we are adding mitzvahs, or are they saying just we are we're just doing our own? But then that you could stop right there, and I think any half intelligent person would understand what he's saying. No, the Rambam needs to go into detail and listen to his detail. Elo kach onu oimre. This is what we say. Shahanaviyah. Imbez tiknu v'tzivu likres ha-megillah by nos. They told us to read the Megillah in its time. Kedei lahaskish v'achach shakadosh baruch hu v'tshuah shasalana v'yikar l'shaveh. What? To remind us about the Eibishter's salvation that he made for us, and he listened to our prayers. B, to bless him and thank him. C, to let know all the generations. It is true what the Torah has told us. To tell everybody What it says in the Torah is true. You see? Then he adds, Al derech zu, he called mitzvah shimi de b'sefer, ben eser ben lisis. Not al derech zu before, that they're not saying it's a mitzvah, al derech zu, exactly what I just told you, all these things. So we're going to go to this Rambam, but I want to, and I know that there was a shiur on in Hilchos Mamrim about this Rambam from my colleague, Rabbi Silverberg, and part of that, the main point, I'm going to pretty much just repeat that. I know it's more or less a repeat of what he said, but there's a lot more in the second part that we're going to talk about, the main part that we're talking about. Just to note, there's a very similar Rambam in Hilchos Mamrim. Perik Beis Halacha Tes. The Rambam asks another question. Here he asks, how did they do it? There he asks, how did the Torah tell us? After he establishes there that Bezdin can establish laws as they go, that they see fit. So he asks, so what's the mitzvah? What's this leisiv leisigra? And the answer there again, right off the bat, simple answer. Shleihaisiv al devetayr v'legav lekvay adov v'leila medavish v'natayr be'betayr be'yishav lekeitzat. And he calls the batayr leisiv al shekdi b'chalevi. Says, don't eat a goat with his mother's milk. That's all basar b'cholim. Vein basar chai. Aval basar is mutter. Chicken is mutter with milk in the Torah. So if you have a bezin v'yata basar chai v'chav, he's like, right. If you ask the basar haif, if they ask the basar haif, that it is part of what the Torah says, that when the Torah says it includes haif, it's also awesome in Torah. That's nice. Aval im omar, if they say basar haif mutter in Torah the anu neser haif aisai, when the nia la'am shu gzeira. That before we goes into the whole arichas, that's the point. They say that no, it's awesome, it's mutter min Torah. We're just making it zera. That should be the end of what he says, and he should have ended up ein zeh ma'aseh v'loisa siyag. But no, the Rambam makes a whole pilpul, and not a pilpul, 4 steps in the pilpul, isn't it? They'll say oif mutter. Why? Because it doesn't say the Torah. So therefore, somebody's going to come along and say, any other behemoth other than a goat is also mutter. Then come along another person and say, yeah, it may be basar A's, even the basar A's, which we've already limited only to a gedi, is mutter if you put basar with challah from a parah or from a kevis. Gives up. Because as he might, which means minoi. Step 2. Another step. You'll come to say, I've chalav eis. Even if a chalav eis, ain't a imay mutter. Even minoi, it has to be imay mamish. Therefore, black, white, usser, all kinds of meat. Anything that has a semblance of meat, which is even oif, filabasayif. And then he says, the Ravid has some problem with it. And the Lechem Mishnah, Kesef Mishnah, they all struggle to figure out what is the problem. But the basic idea that the Kesef Mishnah says is that the main point of the Ravid is that whoever, if they say basar oiv b'cholav is asim and Torah, is not considered meisiv only in mitzvahs asay. That's what he understands. And by lulav and film, anything else, that won't be. They can do anything they want on leis asay. It's a very big chiddush to say that, but that's what he's saying. The Lechem Mishnah, however, learns that the discussion is in what we are saying. And the Rambam, if they say that it's not Torah, as long as they say that it's not Torah, that's okay. The Ravid says that it is irrelevant what they say. As long as they are not adding it on their own, they're just making a takana, they can do what they want. They don't have to add, they don't have to say anything. Okay. That's the I want to analyze. So one thing is clear, and this is what you heard of what was said in Hilchas Mamre, that our Rambam that we're learning today is or tomorrow is talking about the din of Mitzvos. That's his main point. Although the end he writes Mitzvos also, but the main point is the fact that we're adding mitzvahs, and there is we're making siyogim. That's we're making protections for the Torah. That seems to be the difference. Granted, and that's that discussion, and that's why I'm not getting into it. It's been discussed already, and it's clear that there are two things. But I want to discuss a few other things. If the understanding of the Rambam, as we said, is nothing more than as long as they don't say it's min ha-Torah, they're just saying it's a takana. The Rambam seems to be way talking about things that he shouldn't be talking about. There's no reason to get in there, and we know that Rambam do such a thing. You'll tell me it's akadama, but he doesn't say a similar thing in Hilchas Mamre. We see the long explanation, which seems to be totally superfluous. Not only that, if you go to we said there are 4 levels. Chay is mutter, basa behema other than an eiz is mutter, basa eiz without chalapar is mutter, until you come that even chalav without ima is mutter. So, therefore they made us, yeah. Well, what do you need this for? You should say, even if he just stopped in the first one, that's also a reason to make a siyog if you want to worry about that. Why do you need to go to the essence of the pasuk? Next, by us, there is a constant stress on the fact that it was kavu eisam neviim v'chacham. That's it. Kavu eisam neviim v'chacham. Shall he a navi? Rashay lechadish. Avilam eisifu bezdin in navi. Elakach on the way mishan neviim in bezdin tik. Always Nevi'im. Why the necessary? Why? Who cares that the Nevi'im are involved? What do we need it for? And again, here we said 3 steps till he comes to the pasuk. Now, what does he need the pasuk for? These are all things we mentioned. The Evan Ozel has an interesting question. Very often we find in the Bryson, and Bryson again gives examples. Grusha v'chalutza, ainly ele grusha chalutza minayin. How do we know that a chalutza is also? Talmud loyme v'isha. Chalutza is only Rabbanan. Oh, so the Gemara comes along and says, "But Rabbanan ukras machtabam." The Gemara in the Vaydazar, v'ashloka is minayin, minanimili. It says v'ashloka is the Mishnah, minanimili. How do you know it's also? I'm Rabbi Oichel v'kesef tashveri v'chalte ma'am v'kesef ditna v'shesisi ma'am ma'am shleishtane av oichel shleishtane. El me'at chitin v'osen kloiv midrabana krasov. Ask the question: why aren't these brises over or the Gemara when it says Menan immediately gives a pasuk and doesn't explain that it's midrabanan? Why is that not considered nice? They are over the lav by saying that. You can say saying is not, 6 stones break my bones and names won't harm me, but that's not a reason. Bottom line is, don't say it. Why are you opening us up to such questions? Don't say it's their bottom, but I have a buck of the buzzer. Okay. Again, in the end, he says, "Ends a moisif elis oisus yog in Hilchas Mamre." It's not the reason they don't moisif because they're saying it's not an addition to the Torah. They don't have to add the lead. We don't need that line. Very interesting. If you look at the wording in Hilchas Mamre, he writes, "Elakach omru." This is what the Rabbanan said. Now this is mutter, but with that, and we're letting everybody know. V'nedias kalam, which is also an interesting point. Here he says, Elekach anu oimrim. Who's the anu? It's not them, it's us. Why do we have to say anything? What's going on here? So, again, it is clear from the Rambam stress of Nevi'im and Chachamim and this part of Rambam is talking about where mitzvahs were put into place, and the Rambam counts them. The famous machlekes, whether we can count them as a taryag or not, but it's mitzvahs, and it's clear that they were talking about it's yogim, which are guarding the mitzvahs. Okay, so that's clear. That I don't think there is an issue about that, and that has to be clear. That was clarified already before. But I think that the Rambam has two issues, and I think that's the machlekes Rambam. The Rambam's main issue is two. First, they're adding to the Torah. In other words, if the Chachamim come along, that's clear according to the Rambam. As the Lechem Mishnah writes, the Kesef Mishnah. If the Rabbanan come along and say this is Osur Min HaTorah, game's over. It's Liseisif. This is Muta Min HaTorah, and it's not Tigra. That's not a shy. This is what the Torah means. Is that's not. That's issue number one. But there's a second issue. Say what you want, but that's what you're doing. You're adding to the Torah. You're adding new things to the Torah. The Nevi'im came along and made a new mitzvah. The Chachamim came along and made a new halacha. That is adding. You can call it what you want. Actions speak louder than words. That's why the Rambam breaks it up into two parts. Not in each of the places here and in the Lizmah. First, he sets up. If they said we're adding, it's Lizos. Then he goes in to say, even afterwards, it has to be that they need to do this, because if not, then this is what the Torah wants them to do. It's not their initiative. It's a Torah initiative. It's made by the Torah. And he goes on to say that we need to let you know where we're the Torah, when the Torah says, so that's Basuk is telling us we got to know this. Here, that's why we make mitzvahs. Why we commemorate even later mitzvah things is because we're bringing that out. It's all part of the Torah. It's not that the Torah, it's a mitzvah of the Torah. It's part of what Torah wants from us. That all the reasons he brings, like Halalai, L'Shabchai, that's all what Torah wants. And the same thing he does in Hilchos Ma'amad. Also, along Arichas to show you that this mitzvah can't exist without doing this. In other words, this is a protection for the mitzvah. Protection for the mitzvah means the mitzvah is l'chayiv. Now, it may sound a little a little extreme, so I want to explain to you. One second, that answers also the Evan Ozel's question. Paket. When they say Dash State and Pasuk, das Kras, it's telling you it's a din from the Torah. The Torah will require this in order. In other words, for our the grusha to continue, the Torah we're learning from an asmachta that from the Torah that the Torah is interested in protecting that. Now, I didn't create that idea that the Torah creates something that the Rabbanan bring out. the Maral in Be'er HaGoyla. Maral in Be'er HaGoyla has a unbelievable, beautiful pieces on this idea of Chacham adding, and it's incredible stuff. But he deals with a lot of these issues, and one of the issues in Be'er Harishon, he deals with the problem of asmachta. What is an asmachta? And he says, "V'rabim toyim shesvurim leimer ki ein la'isa mitzvah klal shum inyan ala Torah be'emes rak sheimasu l'mitzvah davar drash min Torah ki ilo hayzeh melitza b'va." It's like a memory hook, as some call it. There's a name for it. It's a melitza, a vertel. Zog the Maral va'oimim kach tou v'yavinu devreim. They don't know what they're talking about. Ki chas v'shalom sheyadav echad medevreim nemar la'harchavas aloshin v'yipui hamelitza. The Chacham never wrote that. Rak kol devreim emes. Everything they say is truth. And therefore, v'kasher omru minayin dover zeh v'eviu rayim and hamikra yesh be'emes rayim hamikra. And he brings examples from where we find it, and he ends up. He says that. So he says, "V'im ta'ayim d'armel aliyu kalim beinech devacham chomak sheticham asmach nagashak hashadayim b'zeh teda ki yetz mistaf min haTorah." They come from the Torah. What does that mean? Chomak sheyizeh min haTorah is it's not a Torah din. Rak she'asmach lit Torah. It's leima shurachik min haTorah. At she'enim mechuyev min haTorah mitzvos loisase. Rak umedreigas zeis chacham. Rak sheyesh le'rayev remes min haTorah. In other words, the Torah is telling you this is something to do, but the Torah is telling you Rabbanan do it. It's not us. You got to take it out of there. Oh, so now we understand why it says Talmud Leimar. Or Omakra, because that's true. That's why the Chacham, the Bryce wasn't mincing words. It wasn't just telling you a remes. It's misleading. It's not misleading. It's real, and you can learn from that. And according to the Rambam, it adds Talmud Leimar, Omakra is telling you why it's not Baltesif. Because the Torah is mechayiv this Indian. It's not Torah, but the Torah is mechayiv. So the Rambam adds, perhaps, that it's not enough. We should know it. But we have to be moidia, lo'am, lohidia, lo'am, shugzeira, shlayavai, minadavachai. We got to make sure everybody understands that. There shouldn't be anything misleading here. Nothing that goes out to not understand what we're about. Oh. But there, it's an idea. But here we have another problem. Every bracha, not every, many of the Dina D'Rabbanan, make a bracha sheked d'shalom mitzvos v'tzivanu. And the Rambam Hilchos Brachos explains that we were required to listen to the Chacham, who told us to do this. But that v'tzivanu has in it a dangerous meaning, right? So that's why he says, Elekach onu oimrim. What are we saying when our tzivanu? We're saying that we were told to do this because this is what Torah wants. In other words, the main point there is that according to the Rambam, it's two things. You can't tell me it is Torah, but you need to tell me that it is what Torah wants from us now, because it is necessary for Torah. Something that enhances or protects Torah. So Torah wants this thing to be. If that's the case, we can understand what the Ravid is arguing, because everybody's struggling. What's still the Ravid? You look at the words of the Ravid. Shekol davar shegozru olav asru l'syagel and shmera shel Torah ein mishum le'teisav vasu k'shel Torah. As long as it's a siyag, you don't need to do. There's only one. The Ravid argues there's only one issue. What are they saying? Are they saying it's a Torah din or it's a siyag? Once they say that, you don't need that second issue that the Rambam was worried about. Seif davar You're adding. I don't care. You can add. The argument, the whole line was on the second part. The weird, where the Rambam goes into this harichas. I said, what do you want? What are you wasting your time in? There's no reason to get into all this. And that's why he writes, okay, his lashonos are always very colorful. Call Eili Yisa Ruach. This is all here. It's hot air, because it's nothing gay, not because it's not true. It's irrelevant. Sure, it's true. That's the reason they made the Takbir, but who cares? And what do you need to go through this whole long thing? The main thing is that they say it's not Minat Torah. But the Rambam doesn't satisfy himself with that, because now Minat Torah takes away one part of these. But doing against adding to the Torah is still a mitzvah. You're adding a mitzvah in that the Torah did not add. The answer the Torah wants you to add. And he took it. Now, the Ravid asks there, one of the things he asks is from Asmachta. And I guess, he understands Asmachta like the Maral. So, he says, you see, it is part of the Torah, so therefore, who cares? As long as they're not saying that we're adding it to the Torah. Oh, but according to the Rambam, Asmachta is exactly what he wants. He wants every Rabbanon to be like an Asmachta, according to the Maral. That it originates from Torah, but it's Midrabban. In other words, Torah is the mechayiv of it, the Rabbanon are the ones who implement it. But not that it's they as long and they have a right. Okay, the Torah wants this. That's the key. The Torah wants this. It's the same. The two sides of the same coin. According to the Ravid, that's the raya. You don't need it. According to the Rambam, that's the whole word of what he's trying to say. Okay. Now, just to note this whole thing that the Ravid ends of that there's no Isamaisiv only by Mitzvos say Lulav and Tefillin Tzitzis. It's kedai to read the Maral and Beragel how he explains this whole idea, and he seems to follow. He seems to agree with the Ravid on this part, and but that's not for now. That's not our issue really. Our point is to explain what the Rambam does here and why he spends so much time on what seems to be a simple difference between when there is Baltais or not. And the answer is because the Rambam is telling us there are two issues to deal with. You can tell, as long as you don't say it's Baltais good, that we took away one part. But how do they have a right to add? They are still adding to the Torah. And the answer is, why isn't that a problem? And the answer is because the Torah wants this. All these additions are things that the Torah alone is interested in it happening. And that takes care of it. But even so, if they would say it's Minat Torah Mamish, they would be able to. Sei gesund, Hatzlacha Rabba, and be well.